I think that there's so much good going on in the WNBA. I think that basketball is being played at the highest level it's ever been. I think our team in specific, we are breaking history right now with the amount of points that we're scoring on back-to-back games. I think the Minnesota game, there's just so much distraction. I think the WNBA media, all we ever do is cover everything except basketball. And it's like, what are we doing? There's so much. Like, you can talk about other things. I think those are great stories. I think it shows fans, who people are outside of the court. But I also think we got to keep the main thing.
That is Sophie Cunningham, putting the entire WNBA media ecosystem on trial. But the uncomfortable part is not that she said it. The uncomfortable part is what happened immediately after she said it.
And I think when it comes to the Minnesota game, I think there's so much distraction. But like the matchup between Miles and Kelsey was phenomenal. Our team, that game in particular was a great game. And so I think that there's a lot to be said, and I'm going to let people just do the speaking for themselves. But for me, I want to get back to basketball. It's always been about basketball. That interview happened in February when I was asked a question. And so for me, I just want to, make sure that it stays.
Listen to the distinction she is making. Sophie is not arguing that reporters should ignore everything happening away from the court. She specifically says those stories can show fans who players are as people. Her complaint is that the balance has collapsed. She points to an actual basketball game against Minnesota. Kelsey Mitchell and Olivia Miles had a compelling matchup. Indiana was producing historically strong offensive stretches. Multiple Fever players were performing at a level worthy of serious awards discussion. Yet the conversation surrounding the team had drifted so far away from basketball that the game itself became background scenery. And that is where this story gets much bigger than one Sophie Cunningham quote. Because Caitlin Clark had already made almost the exact same criticism. Two prominent players speaking separately arrived at the same conclusion. The stories being promoted about the league often do not match the reality inside the locker room or on the court. But later,
Caitlin Clark said something very similar about the media.
Do you feel that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it is it's not always based in reality. I feel like media and journalism have a responsibility to tell the stories, and a lot of times you guys are the ones controlling the narratives about what people read and what people talk about, and a lot of that is sometimes so far out of touch with what it is.
Caitlin Clark's wording is even sharper. She says journalists control the narratives people read and discuss, and that those narratives can become completely detached from reality. That matters because public perception does not form naturally anymore. It is selected, packaged, and repeated. One question becomes a headline. The headline becomes a television debate. The debate becomes thousands of social media clips. Then those clips are treated as evidence that the original subject is the biggest issue surrounding the league. The cycle creates its own reality. A reporter may ask a player about basketball for 15 minutes, and then ask one question about a cultural controversy, a social media argument, or an old interview. Which answer becomes the headline? Usually the one capable of starting the largest fight. That choice has consequences. Casual viewers who never watch the press conference think the controversial answer dominated the entire session. Fans begin arguing over a version of events created by editorial selection. Players then receive follow-up questions about the reaction to the first headline. Before long, an entire week of coverage has been built around one answer that may have occupied less than a minute of the original conversation. This is the exact environment Cunningham is criticizing. She did not say basketball receives zero coverage. She said everything else consistently overwhelms it. That is a different accusation, and it is much harder to dismiss.
Focus stays where it should because people are playing at such a high level. We have probably 3 MVPs that could be MVPs on our team specifically, and so that's why I want to do that. No, I was asked a question, and that's simply what it was. I just wasn't making a statement to make a statement, and so I was trying to clear the air, and I did that and back in February, and so it is what it is. And like I said, we're in the middle of season. I'm going to keep it that. We talk about a bunch of distraction. Our team is good. My teammates are good. Our locker room is great, and so now we're just here about to prepare.
Notice what Sophie does after making her point. She does not extend the controversy. She closes the door. She says the original interview happened in February. She says she was asked a question and answered it. She praises her teammates, describes the locker room as strong, and immediately turns toward preparing for Las Vegas. That does not sound like someone desperately trying to become the center of a month-long media storm. It sounds like someone realizing that an old answer has suddenly been dropped into the middle of a season and is now being interpreted as a fresh declaration. The timing is critical. An interview can happen months before publication, especially when it is part of a larger profile. That is not automatically suspicious. Publications regularly conduct interviews well in advance, build stories around schedules, and coordinate pieces with events that make the subject newly relevant. But the audience usually does not see that process. People see a headline appear on Monday and naturally assume the player woke up on Monday wanting to make that statement. That creates a false sense of immediacy. The quote may be old, but the outrage is brand new. Sophie's clarification exposes that gap. Her words were recorded in February, preserved and then released during the season. The statement entered a completely different environment from the one in which it was originally given. By the time it reached the public, every word was being judged through current rivalries, recent controversies, and existing opinions about Cunningham. So when people accuse her of suddenly trying to distract from basketball, they are ignoring the timeline she publicly provided.
All right, let me just address a question that I've been seeing a lot. The interview happened in February. Why did they wait to bring it out now? Why did they wait so long to publish that article now? Two reasons, in my estimation. Two pretty logical reasons to me, but I want to know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Why do you think they waited so long to publish that article? Reason number one for me, they waited until the WNBA season to put out a article centered around a
Why hold the interview? The source video offers two possible explanations, and the first is straightforward. A WNBA player profile has more value during the WNBA season. That is normal publishing strategy. Interest rises when the athlete is actively playing, the team is in the news, and fans are searching for related content. Releasing a profile during the off-season could mean sacrificing attention that would naturally exist during the schedule. There is also a second possibility connected to Cunningham's shoe release. The article reportedly appeared during the same week that her shoe was scheduled to drop. A player profile can support a broader promotional moment, whether that coordination comes from the publication, the athlete's representatives, the brand, or simply timing that benefits everyone involved. None of that proves a hidden conspiracy. There is no verified evidence in this transcript showing that ESPN intentionally delayed the piece to manufacture outrage. The reasonable conclusion is that publication timing likely reflected relevance, promotion, or both. The real problem is not necessarily why the article was released. It is how an older answer was introduced into the present without the broader audience fully understanding the distance between the interview and publication. Context is not only what someone said before and after a quote. Time is context too. A February answer released months later can sound completely different because the league has changed around it. Teams have played games, players have been injured, rivalries have developed, fans have chosen sides. Old comments acquire new meanings that did not exist when the speaker originally made them. That is why responsible coverage should make the timeline impossible to miss. Otherwise, the publication receives the benefit of a fresh controversy while the player carries the burden of appearing to have revived it.
Came to mind, that article dropped the week of her shoes dropping. That article dropped the same week her shoe dropped, that Monday of. So yes, let's put out this player profile article, and trust me, I love bashing ESPN. I'm sure there's other reasons that I haven't thought of right now, or I'm not laying out right now. But the shoe's coming out on Friday. The article drops on Monday. Let's put out a spotlight on this player whose shoe's dropping on Friday. You don't think Sophie Cunningham told whoever was interviewing her, or whoever at ESPN, or her agent, probably more likely, communicated, hey, we have a shoe coming out later this week, later in the season, sometime around July, August, sometime in that area. Can we hold on to this and maybe try to build some PR going?
The shoe release theory is where the story becomes more complicated. Athlete media is not separated from athlete marketing. Profiles, product launches, appearances, and interviews frequently exist inside the same promotional calendar. A story can be legitimate journalism and still arrive at a commercially useful moment. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. But that creates an irony Sophie's critics quickly noticed. She is accusing the media of drifting away from basketball while participating in a profile that discusses her life, her personality, and topics beyond the court. The criticism sounds powerful until you examine what she actually said. Cunningham never argued that players should only be treated as basketball machines. She explicitly defended stories that reveal who athletes are away from competition. Her position was about priority, not prohibition. There is room to discuss shoes, personalities, fashion, relationships, social issues, and every other dimension of the players. The question is whether those topics support the basketball product or replace it. A healthy sports media environment uses personality to bring viewers toward the game. An unhealthy one uses the game as a convenient stage for endless personality conflict. That difference matters for the league's long-term growth. Controversy can attract a large one-time audience, but fans remain attached because of teams, stars, rivalries, and meaningful games. A viewer may click because of an argument involving Sophie Cunningham. That viewer becomes valuable to the WNBA only if the coverage gives them a reason to watch Sophie Cunningham play. When the bridge back to basketball never gets built, attention is harvested without creating loyalty. The media gets a spike. Social platforms get engagement, commentators get content, but the league does not necessarily gain a committed fan. And that is the first major point in Sophie's favor. Her criticism is not anti-media. It is an argument that media attention should eventually lead somewhere.
WNBA media. This is straight up calling a spade right here, right? They know the game. Let's be honest. They know the game. They cover the WNBA. They cover whatever games take place. Nobody clicks into the articles. Nobody clicks into the videos. Nobody clicks into the packages, the promos, the features. No, they don't get no.
Now we reach the economic reality. Detailed game analysis is difficult. It requires watching the games, understanding schemes, identifying matchups, and explaining why a possession succeeded or failed. Then, after doing all of that work, the article or video may still receive fewer clicks than one inflammatory quote. Editors can see those results instantly. They know which headlines attract readers, which segments hold viewers, and which personalities generate reactions. If tactical coverage repeatedly underperforms while controversy repeatedly explodes, the business begins shaping the journalism. That does not excuse every editorial decision. It explains the pressure behind those decisions. A WNBA reporter might genuinely want to analyze Minnesota's defensive rotations, Indiana's pace, or the development of a young guard. But that reporter works inside an organization with traffic targets, production costs, and managers asking why one piece succeeded while another disappeared. The easiest answer is to repeat what worked. One controversial Cunningham story performs well, so a follow-up appears. Caitlin Clark responds to a narrative, so every outlet produces a reaction. A television personality gives an extreme opinion, and the opinion becomes news because people are discussing the opinion. Coverage stops being led by events and starts being led by engagement signals. This is how the system trains itself. Audiences click the most polarizing story. Platforms distribute it more aggressively because it creates comments and watch time. Editors see the performance and commission similar stories. Then fans complain that every story looks the same. Everyone involved can claim they are simply responding to someone else. The publication says it is giving readers what they want. The reader says the publication is only offering controversy. The algorithm says it is merely recommending what users engage with. The commentator says the algorithm forced the topic. Meanwhile, basketball is sitting in the corner waiting for someone to remember the game happened.
Nobody clicks into those. Then as soon as a major story starts transpiring within the league that has more traction than anything that takes place in between those four lines, well, they'll put out an art. They're like, oh, this is getting traction. As a WNBA media person, right? If I'm working at the New York Times, if I'm working at the Athletic, and I put out an article and I see a topic I just threw an article out is getting some traction. Well, you know what my boss is gonna want me to do? My boss is gonna want me to follow that up again. And then if that gets more traction, you know what else my boss is gonna do?
The source video describes this as farming clicks, and the language is harsh because the incentive is obvious. Imagine two pieces are published on the same day. One carefully explains why the Fever's offense has improved across several games. The other highlights a divisive statement from a player. The analysis receives modest attention. The controversy produces 5 times the traffic. Which assignment is the editor more likely to request tomorrow? This is not unique to the WNBA. It affects political reporting, entertainment coverage, men's sports, and nearly every online media industry. Conflict is easier to package than complexity. Anger travels faster than nuance. A headline that invites people to choose a side performs better than one asking them to understand a system. But the effect is especially dangerous for a growing league because the public identity of the WNBA is still being formed for millions of newer viewers. Established leagues can survive weeks of nonsense because fans already possess deep connections to teams in history. The NBA can endure a ridiculous debate because viewers still return for the Lakers, Celtics, Knicks, Warriors, and decades of established rivalries. The WNBA is currently introducing many people to its players, teams, and traditions for the first time. If their first 100 encounters with the league are dominated by resentment, identity battles, and media feuds, they may never discover the actual basketball culture underneath. That is the hidden cost of click farming. It does not merely distort one news cycle. It teaches new viewers what the league supposedly is. And once that perception hardens, every basketball moment gets interpreted through the controversy surrounding it. A hard foul becomes a personal attack. A routine press conference answer becomes a coded message. Teammates sitting apart on a bench become evidence of a locker room feud. Normal competition is transformed into a permanent conspiracy board.
And it isn't their fault. It's their fault because the WNBA media I'm talking about, like now I'm talking about Monica McNutt and Sinead and people like that who say, oh man, we got to do a better job of covering the game. Well, you do. So stop complaining. Stop complaining about it. But they're also doing their job of like farming, of just farming clicks for their networks, farming clicks for their newspaper outlets, or whatever the case may be. To a certain degree, that's the name of the game. Now, anything outside of Caitlin Clark that happens in between those four lines, they get nothing. They get nothing outside of Caitlin Clark and her game.
This clip identifies another contradiction. Media personalities sometimes complain that the basketball is not receiving enough attention while appearing on the very segments that push basketball aside. That is where Cunningham's accusation lands hardest. A broadcaster cannot spend an entire week discussing narratives, outrage, and social media reactions and then act confused that fans are not debating pick-and-roll coverage. The coverage teaches the audience what deserves attention. Of course, individual reporters do not control every assignment. Producers choose television topics, editors select headlines, executives monitor ratings. A media personality may prefer basketball analysis but understand that refusing the popular segment could reduce their role or cost them opportunities. That pressure deserves acknowledgement. It also does not erase personal responsibility. Every person inside the system makes choices. They decide how far to push a claim, whether to provide context, whether to challenge a misleading premise, and whether to redirect part of the conversation toward the sport. They may not be able to transform the entire business, but they can stop pretending they have no influence. There is also a challenge for WNBA audiences. Fans frequently claim they want deeper basketball coverage, but their behavior does not always support it. A breakdown of Minnesota's 9-game winning streak may receive polite interest. A clip suggesting that one player disrespected another can dominate social media for 48 hours. The audience votes with attention. That does not mean viewers are personally responsible for every bad headline. Algorithms aggressively push divisive material because it performs well across large groups. But each click, comment, and repost provides another signal that conflict should remain the main product. Even hate watching counts as watching. An angry reply still increases engagement. Sharing a terrible take to criticize it still distributes the take to a larger audience. That is why this problem cannot be solved by demanding that one reporter behave better. The entire reward structure points in the opposite direction.
Is reality and
Exactly. They have the control of what they want to talk about. But the people that they work for, they don't want that. They don't want to be wasting payroll. They don't want to hire an Alexa Filippo or whoever, not to single out Alexa Filippo. They don't want to hire Alexa Filippo and have her articles get no traction. If she puts out an article and it gets traction, yeah, do it again. Do it again. Yeah, do it again. Monica McNutt says something crazy. It gets traction, it gets clicks, it gets views. Do it again. Do it again. You're driving a lot of traffic to our website.
Now, the source gets specific about what happens inside a media company. If an article performs, management asks for another one. If a personality creates a high-traffic moment, the network wants that personality to recreate it. The names are less important than the pattern. Once a commentator becomes known for generating WNBA engagement, moderation becomes professionally risky. A calm, balanced segment may be accurate but forgettable. An extreme statement can produce clips, rebuttals, stitches, reaction videos, and days of free distribution. The system does not simply reward being correct. It rewards being impossible to ignore. That can gradually change how analysts speak. A complicated opinion is compressed into a clean accusation. Uncertainty disappears because confidence performs better. Every disagreement becomes evidence of a larger conflict. The person is no longer analyzing events. The person is manufacturing moments. Then the players respond to those manufactured moments. Reporters cover the responses. Analysts react to the responses. Fans debate whether the reaction was justified. One original statement creates an entire secondary economy of content. This is the real answer that had to be held until now. Sophie Cunningham is not only calling out biased reporters or poor basketball analysis, whether she intended to or not. She is exposing a machine that monetizes tension more efficiently than it monetizes the sport. That machine does not need anyone to secretly coordinate. There is no requirement for a meeting where executives decide to suppress basketball. The incentives automatically produce the same outcome. The most emotional topic wins the headline. The headline produces engagement. Engagement justifies another emotional topic. Repeat the process until players begin publicly asking why nobody is discussing the games. That is why the problem survives even when reporters agree with the criticism. They can admit the coverage needs improvement and then return to the same format the next day because the format is financially validated.
So if Monica McNutt continues to do it again, Monica McNutt, don't complain about there's not enough basketball talk because you're now contributing to the not enough basketball talk. You can tell your bosses to go shove it, leave ESPN and go do your own thing and talk about what you want to talk about, but you know that probably wouldn't be as fruitful for you either.
The source argues that media figures should stop complaining if they continue contributing to the problem. That is emotionally satisfying, but the practical situation is more difficult. Leaving a major network to create independent basketball coverage sounds courageous. It also means sacrificing resources, access, guaranteed income, distribution, and institutional credibility. Not every reporter has the financial ability to do that, and independent content still depends on the same audience incentives. A journalist can leave television, start a channel devoted entirely to film study, and discover that the controversial videos outperform the basketball videos there too. So the better question is not why every individual refuses to sacrifice their career. The better question is whether mainstream outlets can make basketball coverage more compelling without abandoning substance. They can. Strong analysis does not have to sound like a coaching seminar. A reporter can explain strategy through conflict, decisions, and consequences. Why did one matchup decide the fourth quarter? Which adjustment failed? Why did a star stop receiving the ball? What weakness will the next opponent attack? Basketball contains natural drama. The media often ignores it because off-court controversy is easier, not because the game lacks stories. Consider the Minnesota game Sophie referenced. A matchup between Miles and Mitchell already provides characters, tactical choices, momentum changes, and measurable stakes. Indiana's scoring run creates a historical angle. Multiple teammates playing at an elite level creates internal competition and championship expectations. Those are not boring subjects. They simply require more work than pulling one sentence from an interview and asking whether fans are offended. Cunningham's demand to keep the main thing is therefore achievable. It does not require dry coverage. It requires storytellers capable of turning basketball itself into the central drama.
People are coming at Sophie Cunningham saying, I can't believe Sophie Cunningham saying this. She's one to talk. How dare she say this? She made it that way. Yeah, sure, Sophie. Literally her with this statement. Did we just become best friends? Yup. Sophie talking to herself. This woman is retarded. She started all of it and doubled down.
Then came the backlash. Critics accused Sophie of hypocrisy. Some argued that she helped create the distractions and was now complaining about the attention. Others treated her statement as proof that she lacked self-awareness. There is a fair version of that criticism. Cunningham has a strong public personality. She speaks directly, embraces controversy, and understands that her comments can generate enormous attention. She benefits from a media environment that rewards recognizable personalities. Her visibility is not based only on box scores. So yes, she participates in the ecosystem she is criticizing, but participation does not invalidate the criticism. A player can use media opportunities and still believe the coverage has become unbalanced. An athlete can answer off-court questions and still ask why those answers receive more attention than the games. Someone can benefit from a system while identifying a flaw inside it. The stronger accusation would be that Sophie intentionally creates controversy and then dishonestly pretends she has no role in it. This transcript does not establish that. In the example being discussed, she says she responded to a question during an interview conducted in February. There is no verified evidence here that she independently launched the topic at the time of publication. That distinction matters. Answering a question is not the same as deciding the headline. The publication controls when the article appears, which quotation leads the story and how it is promoted. Sophie controls her answer, and she can be judged for the content of that answer, but she does not control the entire distribution chain after it leaves her mouth. Calling her responsible for every reaction is like blaming a player for every television segment created from a
Hard. This is my response to all those people. Sophie Cunningham got asked a question by ESPN. She responded to that question honestly. And then not only WNBA slows, but just slows in general are saying she started it. It must be rough eating cereal with a helmet on. Sophie didn't start it. She got asked a question. She answered honestly. So technically ESPN started it. Technically ESPN is the one that threw a grenade into the room and just walked out and watched mayhem unfold.
This is the source video's most direct defense of Cunningham. ESPN asked the question. Sophie answered honestly. ESPN later published the material and introduced it into a new moment. The grenade metaphor is dramatic, but it describes a real feature of modern sports media. Outlets can release a provocative quote and then cover the explosion as though they were passive observers. First comes the headline, then comes the reaction article, then a debate segment asks whether the player went too far. After that, another story reports that fans are divided. The outlet becomes both the spark and the fire department. Again, that does not mean the quote should have been hidden. Journalists should publish relevant answers, including controversial ones. The issue is whether the resulting coverage explains the context or deliberately stretches the conflict, because each new stage generates more traffic. This is where the media can prove Cunningham wrong. Show the full answer. Make the February interview date prominent. Explain the question she received. Cover the public reaction once. Then return to the team, the matchups, and the season. Instead, when the same controversy is repackaged across multiple programs and platforms, Sophie's accusation begins validating itself in real time. She says the media covers everything except basketball, and the response is several days of coverage about her saying the media covers everything except basketball. The criticism becomes content. The content becomes evidence for the criticism. That circular pattern is why the story feels impossible to escape.
Sophie Cunningham didn't start this at all. It's crazy the amount of people that are seeing this, not only just WNBA, but the amount of Indiana Fever fans that have turned on Sophie Cunningham after what she said. Surprising, but not. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video, hype the video, subscribe to the channel. That means.
The final layer is the reaction from Indiana Fever fans who turned against Sophie after previously embracing her personality. That reversal reveals how unstable sports loyalty becomes when every comment is treated as a loyalty test. Fans are no longer only asking whether a player helps the team win. They are asking whether every interview answer aligns with their preferred narrative about Caitlin Clark, the Fever, the league, and the media. One comment can transform a fan favorite into a supposed enemy. An old interview can be interpreted as betrayal. A clarification can be dismissed as damage control before people even consider the timeline. That atmosphere is unhealthy for players and exhausting for audiences. Teammates should be allowed to hold different opinions without every difference becoming evidence of a broken locker room. Players should be able to answer difficult questions without every sentence being placed into a permanent political category. And journalists should be able to cover those answers. The solution is not silence. The solution is proportion. Cover the controversy accurately. Attribute disputed claims. Explain when the interview happened. Make clear who asked the question. Do not pretend one statement represents an entire locker room. Then give the basketball enough attention that fans understand why these players matter beyond the argument. Sophie Cunningham is not completely outside the media machine. She is one of its most clickable personalities, and she understands the value of attention. But that may be exactly why her criticism carries weight. She has seen how quickly one answer can eclipse multiple games, strong performances, and an entire team's progress. Caitlin Clark independently warned that media narratives can become detached from reality. Sophie said the WNBA media covers everything except basketball. The language is different, but both complaints point toward the same structural failure. The league has more attention than it once did, but attention alone is not the goal. The goal is to convert attention into lasting interest in the competition. Controversy can open the door. Basketball has to be waiting on the other side, so choose one. Is Sophie Cunningham being hypocritical because she benefits from the same attention she criticizes? Or is she one of the few players willing to publicly expose a media system that keeps turning the WNBA into everything except a basketball league? Tell me which side you are on in the comments. And if you want coverage that follows the evidence without losing the game itself, like the video and subscribe to the channel.